KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, your community hospital with a rich heritage that dates back to before New Mexico was a state. We've been improving the health of the Four Corners since 1910. As a nonprofit hospital, San Juan Regional Medical Center is a values-driven organization. We strive to deliver on our mission to personalize health care and create vitality and enthusiasm in healing. We are here for you when you need us, offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services.
Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, October 24th. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM, the information and cultural beacon of the Four Corners. Special hello to our viewers who are watching us live this morning on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel, part of our visual radio experience here at KSJE, and we hope it's becoming part of your daily routine with our video programs every morning at 8 a.m. Coming up on the morning program today, my guest in the first part of the program is U.S. Senator Martin Heinrich will be joining us. Senator Heinrich, of course, as you know, a Democrat running for re-election. We have been talking with his opponents and will be talking to all three men in the race for U.S. Senate. So that interview coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE with Senator Martin Heinrich. 8:30, we will shift focus just a bit, but still talk politics, or at least voting, because my guests from San Juan College, Gail Dean and Christopher Skipper, will be here talking about some of the general obligation bonds that voters are being asked to approve in November. We'll be talking about bonds B and D that will be on the ballot. General obligation bond B deals with libraries in our state, both college libraries, public libraries, and secondary school libraries, of course. And, of course, general obligation bond D deals with higher education funding for projects in New Mexico at colleges and universities. So we'll be talking to Gail and Chris about those issues coming up this morning at about 8:30. Later on, of course, it is Wednesday, our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab, getting some good words of advice from Dr. Mike Hadabaugh. He will be here. The theme today is Try Not to Suck. That is Dr. Hadabaugh's words, not mine, and he will explain what that means coming up today about 8:55 on KSJE. Roving with the Arts at 9 a.m. on the radio here. Mick Hess will be along. He is playing some Aida, selections from the great opera Aida from Verdi coming up today at 9 on Roving with the Arts, plus sharing arts news and other snippets of wisdom from the mind of Mick Hess today on Roving with the Arts. And don't forget, it's our regional and local author program right on Four Corners, and today Tracy Hales-Vass is talking with Scott Graham, the author, and his book Yosemite Fall. That is coming up today at 10:30 right on KSJE. So we hope you'll stay tuned and, of course, take us with you wherever your Wednesday takes you at 90.9 FM, at KSJE.com, of course, or on our YouTube page and our Facebook page as well. Continuing our coverage of the campaign for 2018, joining me now on the telephone is Senator Martin Heinrich, who is running for re-election. Senator Heinrich, good morning, and thanks for being with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Thank you very much. And you are in the final weeks of a re-election campaign, and that is what brings you to our airwaves this morning. So talk to me a little bit about how things are going.
I think things are going really well. There's a lot of enthusiasm out there. As I travel the state and meet with voters, I am amazed at how many people have early voted already, and I think we're going to see higher levels of participation than we have seen for a few years here in New Mexico, particularly for a midterm environment.
Yeah, I was going to say a big interest in this, what they call an off-year election, and you think that'll translate into more turnout for your race as well?
I really do. I think we're going to see very strong numbers this year. Having been through a few midterms in the past, I just haven't seen this kind of enthusiasm in a very long time.
And let me ask you, you are in a three-way race now. You have, of course, Republican candidate Mick Rich, and then the relative newcomer, Gary Johnson, has gotten into the race as well as a Libertarian candidate. What separates you from those other guys, if you will?
I think that the single biggest thing that separates my candidacy from either of those other two is my commitment to Social Security and Medicare. We have, in this country right now, we have an economy that is working really well for the upper income folks, the folks who actually benefited from that $2 trillion tax cut. But now that tax cut is being used as an excuse to go after Social Security and Medicare, to defund those critical programs that a lot of working people really rely on to be able to have dignity in their retirement. And I am committed to protecting Social Security and Medicare in a way that neither of my opponents is.
And let me ask you then, a lot of folks may say that is maybe contributing to some of the deficit spending, supporting some of these entitlement programs and things like that, but is that something we have to do?
I would argue that the $2 trillion tax cut, which is the third tax cut now that largely benefits upper income earners, is what's contributing to our deficit. The fact that we had two wars and neither of them were paid for at the time is contributing to our deficit. I don't think we should be balancing the budget on the backs of our retirees.
Fair enough, Senator Heinrich. And let me ask you a bit about some of the other issues in northwest New Mexico. I know you've been here campaigning and visiting with folks. As you know, San Juan County is a predominantly Republican area, but there are still a lot of Democrats listening to us and watching us this morning, and also a lot of decline to state independent voters that I know you are reaching out to, and Republicans as well. There's no reason they can't vote for a Democrat in the voting booth. What's your message to folks who aren't Democrats of how they should vote or why they should vote for you?
I'd say the biggest thing is I take a pretty pragmatic approach to governance. My background is as a mechanical engineer. I don't really enjoy the partisan rancor of politics today. What I do enjoy is problem solving, and I've been able to work with Republicans in Washington, D.C., people like Dean Heller of Nevada, or Jeff Flake of Arizona, or Susan Collins of Maine, to actually get good things across the finish line. I helped craft legislation in 2015 that opened up the oil and gas industry markets overseas that have been closed for decades, and at that same time created the incentives that are now driving dramatic new investment in solar and wind here in the state. So there are bipartisan solutions out there, and I think we need level-headed, hardworking people who can sit down and find those and are committed to doing just that.
Senator Heinrich, you've been very outspoken about Farmington's efforts, I think, to diversify the economy, looking at outdoor recreation, whether that's tourism or manufacturing, and this area being maybe a natural area to attract some of those either visitors or industry. Is there something the federal government can do to help in that regard?
There are a number of things that we can do at the federal level to help in that. One, just to help put some of these gems around northwest New Mexico on the map, whether that's through special designations like at Xixlapa. But we can also gather more data, because one of the things we're doing now is we're realizing how strong that economy is. It's something that you want to add to other key planks of your economic plan, but it is a real benefit to communities that can be value added. And we just weren't gathering the data to figure that out in the past. And I credit local leadership in Farmington, in San Juan County, with really taking that seriously, with working hard to diversify the local economy, and I should do everything I can to support that effort.
In the meantime, of course, a lot of the economic drivers here is still extractive industries. Is there any chance to help with those as they may be declining a little bit, but they still do pay a lot of the bills up here?
Well, one of the things that I'm proud of is that energy deal that opened up international markets to domestic oil and gas production. There had been a prohibition for decades on being able to sell natural gas or American crude oil overseas. We reversed that. I also worked with Senator Udall to streamline the permitting process, to speed that up, and we did that without giving up real quality checks when it comes to protecting our environment, and we're seeing some success from that. So we need to work with the jobs of today. We need to think about educating for the jobs of tomorrow and making the investments that will be responsive to a constantly changing energy environment.
Is keeping an eye, though, on diversification, and that's got to be very important for communities like Farmington and San Juan County that's going through what seems to be an economic transformation.
Diversification is the key to the challenges that come with any commodities-driven jobs in particular. And I come from a family where my dad worked for Anaconda Copper Company. My grandfather worked at Battleship Mountain at the gold mine. And one of the things I learned early on is those kinds of commodity jobs produce really solid, good jobs for the middle class, but then they can sometimes disappear overnight. And we need to be ready for those changes in the markets. And the more diverse our overall job picture is, the more resilient it is to that. So we always need to be looking for ways to fill in new jobs in addition to the things that we've relied on for a long time. And education is a really important part of that, to make sure that we're doing the workforce training at places like San Juan Community College to make sure we can take advantage of that.
And Senator Heinrich, let me ask you a little bit about the makeup of the U.S. Congress. Of course, the Senate is currently in the Republican Party's control by just the narrowest of margins. If things were to change after November, what do you think the Democrats would bring to the table as far as control of the Senate and trying to either work with the other side or push through some legislation? What would we see in a Democrat-controlled Senate if that were to happen?
I would push for the Democratic leadership to really focus on infrastructure, because I believe that infrastructure is a place where we can actually craft some bipartisan solutions. And I recognize that no matter who is in charge of the Senate, in the Senate you need 60 votes to get things done, which means that Republicans and Democrats are going to have to work together. So passing infrastructure investments is one of the places where we can really build that bipartisanship. You know, I suspect in the House of Representatives, it's a little different, but in the Senate, you have to find bipartisan solutions.
And it seems like we haven't seen too much of that recently. There's been a lot of partisan back and forth. Is there any hope? Maybe a lot of voters are getting a little fatigued.
No, I want to reject that narrative, because I understand why it exists. It exists because the president is driving a narrative that just swallows the cable news networks, for example. But in the background, people who who care more about getting things done than getting their name on a bill or on a building are doing good, solid work. We just had a water resources development bill pass. That happened because of bipartisan work. We passed a fire fix to protect our national forests, something that we've been working on for 7 years. We passed opioid legislation in the last month that gives New Mexicans new tools, and we passed funding earlier in the year as well to meet our treatment challenges in the state. So there are good things happening. They don't dominate the news, but they're really, really important, and we should have people there who are willing to engage and make those things happen.
It's refreshing to hear you say some of those things, Senator Heinrich, and I appreciate the correction. And I think the media should be on notice then to talk about some of these areas where the two sides are working together, because you're right, we seem to hear a lot about the ways that they aren't, but you tell us they are.
You know, we passed a great veterans VA improvement bill, reform bill this year. It's another one of those cases where, you know, the chair and the ranking member came together, they got their committee to do the work. And I just think that in this environment, because things are so polarized, that some of those good efforts have not received the kind of attention that they would receive in a more normalized environment.
I think that's a fair statement to be made, and I appreciate you making it, Senator Heinrich. And talk to me a bit about some of your other concerns. Let me ask you a bit about education. Is the federal government doing enough for education, helping the states in states like New Mexico, where our high school graduation rates could be higher?
One of the things I want to mention about education is that it is one of those areas where we passed a really good bipartisan bill, and it is a credit to people like Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray, who really chaired that effort in the Education Committee. What we did is we rewrote what people called No Child Left Behind, and we put teachers and communities back in charge of the classroom. The next step is that New Mexico at the state level needs to change its regulations to actually take advantage of that law. to allow our teachers to really direct instruction again. But we can do other things too. I have a bill that has to do with training the workforce for the emerging energy technology. It's called the Energy Workforce for the 21st Century Act. There are things that we can do to really make sure that we have for jobs that don't require a college degree, that we have programs of apprenticeships that start in high school and follow a student all the way through to the kinds of certificates that can put them into a career that pays them a good wage, even if they're not going to go to a four-year university. So there are a lot of things that the federal government can do to support the important work that's happening in our educational institutions here in the state.
I'm speaking with Martin Heinrich this morning. Of course, he is running for re-election to the U.S. Senate, representing New Mexico. Senator Heinrich, can we talk briefly about immigration? That
Sure.
seems to be dominating the news, and it seems like, again, another lots of people have very passionate feelings on both sides of the issue. Is there some legislation that could be introduced, or is there stuff already in the works, perhaps, that can help some of these folks who show up at our country wanting the opportunities that the United States provides, but giving them a path to citizenship? Is that still part of the conversation?
It is still part of the conversation. I think it's important to realize that there's a refugee issue and then there's an immigration issue, and we need to address both. The current administration has really sort of pulled back from the work that needs to be done in Central America to prevent refugees from leaving destabilized countries and heading here or anywhere else. That's something that's really important. We need to work with those countries to restabilize those areas so that people don't need to leave in the first place. But we also have an immigration issue here. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Yvonne Orozco Acosta, who is a dreamer, who was my guest at the State of the Union address, but she is also the New Mexico Teacher of the Year. And we need to make sure that there are pathways to citizenship for people like that. She is a poster of exactly what we should can be benefiting from as a nation by having smart immigration policy. And at one point, we were very close to a deal. We had a deal with the president. Both sides' leadership was willing to support it. And then several hours later, that got reeled back. The problem's not going away. We absolutely need to be committed to solutions.
In the next Congress, what do you think we should be watching for as things happen after the election, after November, when you get back to work? Social Security, Medicare, some of those issues that you mentioned earlier?
I think absolutely Social Security and Medicare. We're seeing now Mitch McConnell say that we should cut back severely on Medicare and Social Security as a way to pay for some of the tax cuts. I think there'll be a huge battle over that, and I think the American people's voice will be heard. But on a more optimistic note, I think there will be a conversation around infrastructure, and I think that will be a very positive conversation for our country to have. When we don't take care of our infrastructure, one of the things I learned just serving on a local city council, where you have to have folks come in and look at your bonding capacity and make sure you're solvent, you learn that deferred infrastructure maintenance is viewed by all the bonding rating agencies as debt. They see it as debt on the books. And I think we need to realize that and realize that one of the reasons why we were so competitive throughout the 20th century is that we always took investments in infrastructure seriously.
All right. We'll be watching. Martin Heinrich, thank you very much for joining me this morning. I appreciate your time very, very much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Martin Heinrich, my guest here on KSJE. Back with more in just a moment.
This program on KSJE is supported by Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation, providing a competent, innovative, and caring team of professionals to serve wealth management, trust administration, employee benefit plans, retirement planning, and estate settlement needs. Find out more about Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation at 505-599